And welcome to the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Thank you for spending your July evening with us. Matt Hatfield here with you. And at this time, it's the Legends Update with our friend Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. Find them on Facebook. Find them on podcasts. You won't be disappointed. You'll have a great time going down memory lane. And today, Coach Hatcher, we go down memory lane with one of the all-time greats from the Boston Celtics, the 10-time champion, Sam Jones.
Hey, listen, they talk this trash about guys got all these championship rings and all that kind of stuff, and he's humble in a lot of things. He's so direct in everything else, I'm tell you. So the only guy that got more championship rings than Sam, now he's got one for every finger, is Bill Russell. So ain't nobody got nothing else. Don't talk about Michael Jordan. Don't talk about all that stuff. He's very candid at it as well. He said, my record proves for itself. This guy is probably not only the top 50 greatest small forwards in NBA history, one of the most respected people that you can ever know, not just as a humanitarian, but as an athlete. He's real. His word resonates very heavily, not just around the legend world. We've been with Retired Players Association so long. Matter of fact, he was one of the guys that really pushed the Retired Players Association to get involved in the United States Army and everything that we do. But not only being an Army veteran himself, we collaboratively, I really think that I'm a young'un to him, but we really put in front of the Retired Players Association so much the importance of veterans and honoring our wounded warriors and whatnot. So he's a great guy, and it's a thrill to talk to him because you don't talk to many people. Sam is one of the most cantankerous guys you ever want to see, but he speaks when he wants to talk. So having him here on the Matt Hatfield show with Legends Update at 94.1 the entire water, it is something special. So I'm going to let you go because he'll tell you exactly what you need to know. He'll give you what you call the news you can use, man. I'll turn you over to Sam.
That's right. As from our Norview living legend, Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, to now the 10-time NBA champion of the Boston Celtics, 5-time All-Star. That jersey number 24, it hangs in the rafters there in Boston with the C's. The Hall of Famer Sam Jones with us here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Sam, it's a real pleasure to talk with you. How's life treating you?
That is treating me very, very nicely. Being 87 years old, I've got to worry about this virus that's going around, especially in Florida, where we have a high rate of coronavirus that are attacking us. And now they're talking about having the Republican National Convention here, and we're trying to stop that.
Yeah, it's not a great time in our world with everything going on, but certainly we wish you all the best and hope things go well for you down there in the Sunshine State. Sam, you drafted 8th overall in 1957 by the Celtics. What did you think at that time, and could you ever imagine your career would turn out the way that it did?
No way. I got to tell you right now, you got to think something. That was 10 years after Jackie Robinson. Mm-hmm. But I was the first black player from the Division II and from all the black colleges and universities, drafted number one in any sport, basketball, baseball, or football in those times. And I felt like Jackie Robinson. If I could make the Boston Celtics as the number one draft choice, they would look into other black schools because they were not looking into the black schools for black players. And you may not know this, in 1957 when I reported to the Boston Celtics, there could be only 2 black players on each team. There was a quota because that's what the commissioner wanted. Only 2 black players on each team. So I didn't make the team because of my talent. I made the team because Bill Russell was the only black player on the Boston Celtics at that time. So I was told by a reporter in Boston.
Wow. Well, you mentioned the name Jackie Robinson. We know how powerful and instrumental he was on and off the field. And you bring up Bill Russell, the only guy who's got more rings than you, as Coach Asher said, with 11 there. Tell me about Bill. And I know in a lot of ways he was a trailblazer for professional sports and African Americans. And on and off the court, what made him so special?
Well, Bill Russell was a winner. And not only that, he made us better players because they talk about the GOAT today, G-O-A-T, the greatest of all time. How is it that you compare anybody with Bill Russell? I just think about this as I go down this history. They went 56-0. in 2 years at San Francisco, University of San Francisco. They won 2 NCAA championships. When he left there, he went to the Olympics in 1956, and they won the Olympics. And he came back with the Boston Celtics in December. They had never won a championship until they brought in Bill Russell. And from that day on, for 13 years, he played in 13 Eastern Division Finals. He went to 12 NBA Finals, and he won 11 NBA championships. There is no comparison to what he could do.
It's hard to argue, Sam. And the thing I think people forget about, back in your era, when you guys played, people talk about, well, these guys today, the Jordans, the LeBrons, the Kobes, and so forth. And there's always been the argument of the dominant big men, with certainly the likes of Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain. You get to more modern people such as Kareem and Shaq. But back when you guys played, they didn't always chart block shots. And if they did completely, I think he would have shattered the records. And secondly, there was no three-point line back then. So the numbers are skewed today as compared to back in the 50s and 60s.
Well, I could say this, Matt. I've been asked, are the players better today than we were? And my answer is yes. But give us the same thing that these players have today, such as personal trainers, nutritionists, travel first class, or have their own planes, can leave where they can go, have the equipment, make them better players. If we had the same thing, yes, we would be just as good. But we did not have those things. So, yes, they are better than we are because of what they have today. But I tell you this right now, we had a great coach, and we had a great owner. Our coach was Red Auerbach, and our owner was Walter Brown. And believe me, they talk about Boston, but Boston was the first to draft a black player in the NBA, Chuck Cooper. First to have a black coach in Bill Russell, and first to have a starting team of all black players in 1964. Bill Russell, Pat Sanders, Willie Knowles, Casey Jones, and Sam Jones. And we knew that we had to win because looking at the stands, it was the white people who were buying most tickets. And if we didn't win, we knew they were not coming back. And then we went on to win 3 straight championships with those black starters.
An amazing run, and we'll get to some of those stories here with Sam Jones, the all-time great from the Boston Celtics, a 10-time NBA champion, part of the league's 50th anniversary team. He wore number 24 and scored 24 points in his last game as a pro. It's the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. The Legends Update brought to you by our friend, the living legend from Norview High School, Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. Check out the podcast, Facebook page, and much more. Sam, you referenced him, Red Auerbach, arguably the greatest coach of all time in professional basketball. I'm sure you have countless stories, and particularly in a time like you sort of referenced, socially it was a different world back then, and Red was just a unique guy, wasn't he?
He was a great guy. We went to Kentucky to play an exhibition game. Adolph Rupp, the coach, said he would never have a black player on this team. And they had great teams. We stayed in this hotel, and we went downstairs to eat, and they told us they don't feed black people in the dining room. And so we were not served, and we went back, and I was getting ready to pack my bags to go back to Boston, but Russell said, let's go speak to Coach first. And after we finished talking with Coach, he took us to the airport. We went back to Boston. That's a game that we missed, and it was not Coach's fault, it was the league's fault, because they were supposed to find out that this hotel would feed us and house us. And it was odd that they let us stay there, but we could not eat. So we did not play the game.
That's something else. Now, speaking on Red a little more, as well as Bill Russell and your teammates there, Bob Cousy and Casey Jones, those guys. I mean, before Robert Horry was the clutch shooter and Steve Kerr and Reggie Miller, there was a guy named Sam Jones who was known as the shooter, and you made a lot of clutch plays and big shots down the stretch of some championship runs. How much confidence did Red, as well as those teammates like Bill and Bob and Casey and others, have in you down the stretch, and what did that give you as a player?
Well, first of all, it's not about who starts the game. It's about where you are at the end of the game. It's when it counts most, when you really need baskets. And I was one of those players who always wanted the ball in clutch time because I knew that the players had the confidence in me and the ability that I would make the shot. But I felt good about it because I knew that my teammates would get me open for this shot. And many times it meant losing a NBA championship game or falling way behind. So they called on me to take the shot, and I felt good about it. And so in many 6 or 7 NBA finals, they called on me and I came through for them. And that's what I like about it. We had some great players. Sometimes you have players who don't want the ball in clutch time. They look away from the coach. I looked at the coach because I was very confident. Give me the ball and get out of the way, and let's go and win this game. And that's the way I felt.
Sam, who were the biggest influences on your life and on your career?
Well, I think it was my father died when I was 4 years old. My mother had a lot to do with what happened to me, and then I got married as soon as I graduated from North Carolina College in Durham, North Carolina. I married a young lady that I had known, and she was the biggest influence in my life. In fact, she is probably the reason that I played professional basketball.
Really?
Yes, I'll tell you this. Her father, when I asked her father about getting married, he says, all I want you to do is take care of my daughter. And I said I would. And I had this job offered to me. Now, you got to put this in perspective. The Celtics had just won their first World Championship. And if you were a coach, and those players are going to stay for the next year, and they had won your first championship, you're not going to cut any of those players. At that particular time, Boston only carried 10 players, as many as the other teams. And I told my wife, I think I better take this job teaching school because your dad said I had to take care of you, and I know that I have a job. And she says, if you don't try out for the Boston Celtics, you will think about this for the rest of your life. So you've got to go and see what you have. I said, is that the way you really feel? She said, yes. I says, okay, don't forget, I told you what your dad said. The Celtics, not guaranteed, but my job teaching school is. And if I go to the Celtics, they will have hired someone else. My whole life had changed because I made the team and I played for 12 years and I had 12 outstanding years. And I really do believe that God and my wife had faith in me.
Sam, as you look at it, back in those days, and we'll talk about it here, the 8 straight titles from 59 to 66 with yourself, Bill Russell, Casey Jones is the only members of that team. But what sticks out to you more, the first game, the last game, the first title, the last title? What sticks out the most in the memory bank with some of those moments?
Only the last title. The reason I say this, we were young, and when I joined the Celtics, they had just won their first World Championship. And I was the only player on the team at that particular time, 1957, the only rookie on the team to be a part of this. And every game they would announce the world champion Boston Celtics. And because I was a rookie, I was the first to be introduced. Even though I had not won a championship, I felt like I was a champion because of the way they said it. And man, it just makes you feel, it made me feel so good to be out there on the floor with these players. And it's amazing that in my first 9 years, I had won 8 straight championships. We lost the first one my first year because Bill Russell got hurt. Mm-hmm. I can do that right now. Had he never gotten hurt, we may not have lost the championship the whole time. But you asked me a question. Let me answer your question.
Sure.
Last championship, 1969, was my greatest championship of all of them. Now, someone says it's the first. No, it was my last because I had won so many. And we were not supposed to win. We finished 4th place that year because of injuries to many of our players. first year that a fourth-place team could play in the NBA playoffs. And we had to go against Philadelphia and the New York Knicks. They were so tough. My gosh. We had to start on their home court for the first time in my life. We had to start on somebody's home court for the first game. Now, all we got to do is win one, because we don't feel that we can lose at home. And we did beat them, but now we got to go play the great Los Angeles Lakers with Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain, and Jerry West. That's 90 points right there. We had a kid by the name of Bill Goodrich, who was very, very good. It was a great team. So everybody felt that we couldn't win, except our team. We knew that we had a good team. We knew that we had recovered from our illnesses and our injuries, and that we could play against anybody. And we won in 7 games, and we won on LA's home court. But what happened in the 7th game, many people will not know this. They put out in the seats on paper that when the Lakers win the championship, Chick Hearns, who had been with the Lakers for many, many years, would interview in order as the Lakers came to them. And that would be Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, and Wilt Chamberlain. And the USC band would play Happy Days Are Here Again. And the balloons would come out of the rafters. They were purple and gold. And all these balloons were up in the rafters. And so I took this sheet to Russell, let him read it, and Russell changed the way we were going to play this game. He said that we were going to run until we can't run anymore. We had planned to slow the ball down, but Russell changed because he read this stuff on the paper. We won our last championship our last year, not knowing that Russell was going to retire. So we retired together, and we had won, with me and Russell together, we had won 10 out of 12 championship rounds. You just can't beat that.
No, that's a wild start. And I'll have Coach Hatcher jump in here in a second as well. But, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong. I remember seeing some archive footage of that Game 7 memorable win over the Lakers with West, Chamberlain, and Baylor that you referenced. I want to say there was a shot that went straight up in the air and it bounced in. I think it was Don Nelson. Was that correct?
Yes, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody kept telling me, Sam, how did you make that shot? I said, listen, guys, I didn't do that bad. That was Don Nelson. That ball, when that ball hit the back of the rim, Matt,
yeah,
it went beyond the backboard, straight up, came right down, straight in the basket. That was unbelievable. There's one thing I would like to say.
Sure.
We had a player that came in the league at 28 years old. He had a lot to do with us winning that championship. Nothing was ever said about it. He had a quiet 20 points. His name was Emmett Bryant.
That's right.
He played with the Knicks. And none of us on the team knew that he had scored all of these points. And no one talked about it. It was Russell, Havlicek, and Jones. Well, we had a lot of players who contributed to our success. All of those years that we won, we had players who they didn't talk about. They didn't talk about Sat Sanders. They didn't talk about Larry Siegfried. And these players had a lot to do with us winning championships.
Coach Hatcher, for people that said today about the best teams of all time, anybody that wants to dispute where the Celtics rank to beat that Lakers team with Chamberlain, West, Baylor, or young Gail Goodrich on their floor and have the run of dominance they did. And I think people forget, sort of like Sam's talking about, there were a lot of good guys that were hitting that people don't know about because all you hear about are the headliners.
Yeah, it was miraculous. And people don't realize that the year before Chamberlain went to the Lakers was when Wally Jones had to check Sam Jones. The only game in that little run that the Celtics lost was against the Philadelphia 76ers, and Wilt and Wally and that team there, that was in Philly. And that was probably, oh my gracious, and you'll see some of that coming along. But people don't realize the nuances of what went on the shoulders of those that helped make the game. And this is really why we're so proud of Legends of Sports Update, Sports Inside and Out, is that it's so important for your listeners and our listeners, not just here, but on SoundCloud and around, to really understand those that help make the game as to what it is today. And that, and it's good for us, and so proud for me. Sam calls me a youngin'. I'm 70-some years old. I take it down because Sam, he'll say things, and even with his dear God, bless her, his wife, she used to say, listen to him, Coach. Listen to him. He ain't going to tell you nothing wrong. Now, we have Bermuda. She telling me what to do to listen to Sam. So it was very interesting for me to be able to have this man in my life because he becomes such a vital part, just like Wally. He was a surrogate father to me, even during the time he was coming up in Washington, D.C. People don't realize the impact that Sam not only made on the court, but off the court, and the educational situations and facetiousness that was going on in Washington. He was athletic director for the entire city of Washington. He was one of the first coaches at UDC, which then was District of Columbia. Things that he's done, not just off, has impacted so many people, and it's always good to be able to have someone that you can call. I don't care, sometimes it could be a little distance between it. Sam is the type of guy, one of the greatest sports legends in sports history, would just call you out of the clear blue sky, say, Hatch, what you doing? And when I went through my tumultuous times with Mike Zilla, my dear heart and program director, and Wally, the guy that meant so much when he called me and said, Coach, how are you feeling? And to hear that from Sam on a watch of my life that wasn't too good at that particular time, that I'm back now, meant so much. But it's not just me. It's indicative of what he is and what he's meant, not just to me, but so many people. And one thing for sure, he will never take a shortcut for his stature, the things he thinks of. He says what he says. His yay is a yay, and his no really is a no. So I thank so much for him. And the guy he talking about, him and Brian, a good friend of mine, he will be on the show as well, okay. Matt. And to hear something that Emmett used to talk about, the things that Sam and the Cats did for him in his career, yes, that's another story in itself. But those are the type of guys that were able to become self-confident enough to do the things he did. Sam helped me when I went overseas. You already know when me and Wally was with him in Washington, D.C., and his prowess, and he saying me what I should be able to do in coaching over in Europe, and after I played over there, and then we took a pride in our veteran status, and him and Lenny Wilkins, and just, we were very happy to be able to represent the United States of America in as far as our veterans concerned, because he had a real impactful career for the United States Army, as I did in the Navy, and we always hooked up in all over the country. I think Sam, we went all over the country to VA hospitals. Sam interviewed the last of the Whisperers, the code Whisperers in World War II. The last one was in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was so happy to be able to meet Sam before he passed at 90-some years old.
Wow.
So this is the type of things that it means a lot to me. And I kid with him, but, I think the world of him. And, he's a great guy, and he is the face of the Boston Celtics, along with Bill when it comes to that. No other Celtic can be clarified as what you call a true implant of legends than the parquet man, Mr. Bank himself. First guy I ever see shoot a bank shot from the side of the basket. That's weird. So, but he's a fine guy, and it's so happy for me to be able to call on him and be a part of this update in the Matt Hatfield show. Yeah.
Absolutely. And our last few minutes here with Sam Jones and a Legends update here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. The shooter, the 10-time NBA champ and 5-time NBA All-Star Hall of Famer here. And Sam, I could talk with you all day. It's been a real joy, and we really appreciate it. But in your career, is that achievement, the 10 rings, the thing you're most proud of, or is it something else?
Matt, I really don't think that much about the 10 rings. I think about my teammates and the way they surrounded us at times in bad times. One of the things I really think about is there were a lot of places we could not eat if the hotels were closed. We went out across the street to eat. And I remember one night we left Boston because we thought there was going to be snow and we couldn't travel the next day. So they chartered a plane for us to fly into St. Louis, Missouri to play the St. Louis Hawks the next night. And we got there, the hotel dining room was closed, so we went across the street. And we were hungry because we had just finished a game in Boston. And we went across the street, and I think I was the first in line. It was a 24-hour, all-night eatery. And when I got to the cashier, the young man said, I would like to serve you, but we're not allowed to serve Negroes back in those days. We were Negroes. We were not called blacks. And I didn't throw my tray away with my food on it. I said, well, thank you very much. I could understand that. But what I remember is that the white players who were behind me on my team, they all walked out. And I commented to them that, guys, I know you're hungry. If you'd like to eat, go back and eat. Because I know how you feel. But none of those players went back to eat. And that's when I knew that this team was together. Not only as white and black players, but as players, that they would walk out with Russell, and Casey, and Satch, and refuse the food that were not allowed to be served to blacks. And I think that's what I was very, very proud of when they walked. That meant this was a team that needed to be reckoned with. And so those are moments that welled up in me that I wanted to cry. You know, the strength of a black man is not to cry, but there were tears coming down my cheeks that I refused to let them see because of what they had done. So that's what I liked. And I got to tell you this. Bob Coons is 91 years old, and I spoke with him yesterday, and he's doing well.
Okay.
And I spoke to him because of the fact that my other teammate, Tom Tyson, is very, very ill, and I was trying to get in touch with him. And they both live in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he had spoken to Tommy about a week ago, but not since. And so I've been trying to find out about him, and I speak to Bill Russell almost 3 times a week. And I speak with Satch Sanders maybe once a month. So I'm staying in touch with most of my teammates that are still living. There's another one that I don't have the opportunity to speak with. They called him my brother, even though we were not related. His name is Casey Jones, who is now suffering from Alzheimer's. And he looks so good. He's very, very healthy, but he does not know any of us. And that we can only hope that God bless him and keep him healthy until his days come.
For sure. Teammates for life and champions for life. I'll get you on this one, Sam, and I greatly appreciate the time again. Tell me what you think of the game today. Who do you enjoy watching, be it teams or players? And words of wisdom Sam Jones would pass on to the younger players and those aspiring to make it to the NBA. What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, you got to have patience. You just got to remember that there are players who are already experiencing the ball game that's there, and the coach believe in them. But stay in shape, because when they call on you to play, you've got to be ready. The same thing that happened to me. I really thought I could be a starter when I first got there. Guys who played in front of me, I learned from them. And they actually taught me about how to play defense against other players, even though they knew that one day I may be taking over their job. And so that's what I liked about the Boston Celtics. Red Auerbach didn't teach me the plays. It was the guard who I had been before who taught me the plays. And they taught me well. We never had a playbook. Everything was in our heads. And when a play was called, we were going to execute. And we knew how to execute. So be patient. Your time will come. And when your time comes, be ready.
Good deal. And the other part of that question, what do you think of the game today, and do you enjoy any specific players or teams when you put on the television to watch some basketball?
Oh, man. I've always enjoyed Golden State. when they had everybody, it's not like it is today.
Right.
But when winning those championships, I thought Steph Curry is going to make the league bring in a 4-pointer from where he shot. I mean, he started shooting coming across half court. And Green, who was rebounding, was just a great shooter, but he could rebound and he could pass the ball so well. And Klay Thompson, my gosh, taking those threes and the way he played defense, you kind of like it. Iguodala. I can go back and name all of these players, and I'm saying, my gosh, how can they lose with what they have? They had offense, they had defense, and they played the game well, and the coach let them play. So I enjoyed watching them, and I enjoyed watching Oklahoma when they had Kevin Durant. I thought that team could have been one of the most powerful teams had they stayed together, but it did not happen. Those are two teams that I love to watch. And I love to watch LeBron James because there was a kid who came in at about 18 years old. He might have been 19. But he's been playing for like 16 years. You never realize this. And as he gets older, he gets better.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And I'm trying to watch him to see when is he going to come out of the ball game. Because he's 30-some years old, maybe 35 or 36 years old now. And he's still playing, and he's playing at the top of his game.
Yeah, for sure. Well, always at the top of his game, the 10-time NBA champion of the Boston Celtics, the Hall of Famer, retired number 24, Sam Jones, along with our buddy, Coach Charles Hatcher, the Northview great from Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. Gentlemen, it's been a real blast talking to you both. We wish you all the best health-wise, and we'll keep in touch, all right?
All right. Thanks a lot, and please, thank you so much for letting us be a part of a great sports show, probably the best there in the Hampton Roads area with you, Matt. And we're so happy to be able to bring the greatest Legends of Sports on Legends Update with you down there for our home there in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And thanks so much, Sam, for coming through for me again, old friend. And I'll have to let Max know that we had. I'm quite sure she's going to be listening as well. But listen, you just take care of yourself. God bless, and keep us in prayers as I do you, my friend.
All right. Thanks a lot, fellas. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.